In early summer 2025, a low-resolution photo surfaced on Chinese social media. A strange aircraft, hulled like a flying boat, painted in naval gray, sat parked along the Bohai Sea. To defense analysts, it looked disturbingly familiar. It reminded them of classified files from decades ago. Something that had failed so spectacularly, no one ever tried again. Its sudden appearance suggested China had finally cracked an engineering challenge the rest of the world had written off as impossible. They called it the Bohai Sea Monster. But the real question was, why now? In the early 1960s, at the Cold War at its peak, the renowned Soviet naval engineer Rostislav Alexeyev was given the time, space, and resources to pursue an entirely new kind of vehicle. His unusual creation was the Ekranoplan, a craft that skims just above the surface of water or land, using a physics phenomenon called the ground effect. When a wing flies close to a flat surface, the air beneath it becomes compressed, creating a high-pressure cushion that boosts lift and reduces drag, allowing the vehicle to travel just feet off the water. Too low for planes to track, and too fast for ships to catch, the Ekranoplan offered the Soviet Union a novel way to transport cargo, troops, and basically anything Russia needed at jet-like speeds without relying on runways or vulnerable airspace. Its low-altitude flight also made it difficult to detect by radar. Although flying so close to the surface introduced risks such as waves, wind, and unstable pressure zones, it was well suited for calm seas and coastal regions. Early experiments produced a series of manned and unmanned prototypes, culminating in the massive Karabi Maquette, or KM. At 550 tons and 302 feet in length, this behemoth, the largest aircraft in the world at the time, earned a fearsome nickname from the baffled American analysts who were the first to spot it in satellite photos floating in the Caspian Sea, the Caspian Sea Monster. Under the support of Soviet Defense Minister Dmitry Ustinov, the Ekranoplan program accelerated. One major product was the A-90 Orleanok, a 125-ton transport craft. The Soviet Navy originally planned to field over 100 of them, but only a few dozen were ultimately built, seeing limited service in the Black Sea and Baltic fleets. Without a doubt, the most ambitious model was the 400-ton Lund class. Completed in 1987, this one-of-a-kind model was no simple transport, but a full-scale weapons platform, equipped with 6 P-270 musket supersonic anti-ship missiles mounted in pairs on top of its central fuselage. However, the economic turmoil following the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991 halted most military projects, including the Ekranoplan. After years of Cold War secrecy and limited deployment, the ground effect vehicle concept seemed to be doomed forever. For decades, the only completed Lund-class model sat idle at a naval base on the Caspian Sea until it was eventually towed in 2020 to a nearby coastal city to become a naval museum. Yet, around the same time, another ground effect vehicle was nearing completion. In late June 2025, a grainy photograph of a mysterious flying boat-hulled aircraft with its nose section obscured, sitting on a pier located on the Bohai Sea at the northwestern edge of the Yellow Sea, was posted on Chinese social media. Since then, the model, now nicknamed the Bohai Sea Monster, has been touted by defense trackers as the most ambitious Ekranoplan built in nearly half a century. Because no details have been officially announced about this ground effect vehicle, there's little that can be deduced from the grainy footage. The aircraft, painted in naval gray camouflage, seems to feature a prominent joined V-tail, with wings terminating in large outrigger sponsons, likely acting as stabilizing floats, with additional smaller ones in the midsection of the hull. The high-mounted T-tail, a design often used on ground effect craft, helps keep the control surfaces clear of spray and turbulence when flying low over water. It's likely that the airframe makes extensive use of composite materials, which would contribute to lower weight, improve performance, and reduce signature. A stepped hull, typical of flying boats, is also present, along with a large side door that would be practical for loading cargo or conducting personnel recovery operations. But without a doubt, the most debated aspect of the strange aircraft is whether or not it's jet-powered. Some of the photos suggest it might be, as there are 4 large exhausts high on the wings at the back that don't look like they belong to a typical propeller setup. Yet some think it was built for propellers that just haven't been added, while others believe it might use a more advanced system, perhaps a hybrid electric system. The photographs don't show enough detail to be sure of the Ekranoplan's power source. However, if this aircraft really does run on jet engines, a jet-powered Bohai Sea Monster would be faster, heavier, and possibly much more capable than anything that's ever been built before. The viral images of China's latest Ekranoplan have left many warfare technology analysts wondering what exactly the Bohai Sea Monster is for. Features like her size, hull shape, and naval paint scheme point to being a heavy-lift cargo platform or a new form of aerial resupply. Some analysts have even suggested potential roles in maritime patrol or anti-submarine warfare, where its low-altitude flight profile could offer unparalleled stealth and speed across a wide area. Part of the reason China revived the Ekranoplan could be practical. The nation's been expanding its naval forces at a pace few can match, with many analysts viewing this as preparation for a future conflict over Taiwan. But there's also the possibility that China is building platforms like this simply because it can. However, such a design may only have been possible through help from unofficial channels. Around the same month the Bohai Sea Monster was first spotted, the New York Times obtained a Russian Federal Security Service document detailing Chinese efforts to poach aerospace specialists from Moscow. Among the many recruitment priorities was gathering former Soviet engineers with experience on Ekranoplans. China's military ambitions provide the backdrop. The People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, already fields hovercraft for amphibious operations. But Ekranoplans offer something unique: speed and stealth. By hugging the sea surface, they fly below most radar detection thresholds. And by operating outside typical naval and air lanes, they could prove to be a force enabler and multiplier. However, it's entirely possible that this aircraft serves merely as a technology demonstrator or subscale model meant to evaluate different design features and systems, or an early-stage platform meant to guide the development of larger future variants. Interestingly, the Bohai Sea Monster is not the only aircraft of its kind. Other nations in the world have pursued some kind of ground effect vehicles. China itself has already tested smaller craft like the DXF-100 and the Albatross, even ultra-modern unmanned ones, which researchers in Poland and Denmark are also developing. One of these efforts is the Liberty Lifter program, a U.S. military Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA project, launched in 2022 to develop a low-cost winged aircraft to transport heavy cargo, troops, and supplies across the endlessly vast distances of the Pacific. The objective is to ease the Pentagon's growing logistical challenges in the event of a large-scale conflict in that region, with a main long-term goal to match the payload capacity of a C-17A Globemaster III. While the C-17 is rated to carry up to 82 tons, it typically operates with loads closer to 60 tons, including both cargo and personnel. Two contractors, General Atomics and Aurora Flight Sciences, were selected in early 2023 to develop competing designs. The former's version featured 8 turboprop engines mounted along a straight, high-mounted wing, paired with a large central hull. The aircraft was expected to operate in moderately rough seas and even transition to higher altitude flight if needed. The original plan called for both teams to complete their initial design reviews in 2024 and a full-scale demonstrator in 2027. However, on July 2nd, mere days after the Bohai Sea Monster appeared on the Chinese coast, DARPA officially ended the Liberty Lifter program after deciding it was neither feasible nor cost-effective. Technically, the Bohai Sea Monster is an aircraft, not a vessel. That distinction means the craft can fly over areas where naval mines and submarines would pose a threat to conventional ships, even in waters considered secure. Though it would not last long in an old-school naval battle, should a war break out near China's coast. Geography would work in its favor. Short ranges, familiar waters, dozens of forward bases and contested islands within reach. Some analysts have pointed to even broader roles like maritime patrol, anti-submarine operations, maybe even acting as a sensor or relay node in a wider network. If that's the direction this platform is headed, it wouldn't need to survive a full-scale assault. It would just need to do one job in one window of time before vanishing off American radars completely. For decades, the US and its allies have prepared for missile barrages, air raids, and stealth bombers. But they may soon have to think about something else entirely. A low, fast, heavy-lift machine that doesn't follow the usual flight paths. Because it doesn't need to.